McKinnon book. It was written in the early 1900s. The first statement on the very first page states that Walton County was settled and established in 1828. It actually was not. It was established on December 29th, 1824. It also talks about the early settlers coming into Walton County, and it mentions a Neil McClendon. There is no Neil McClendon. It's Neil McLennan. He came over with Daniel Campbell, John Folks, and some other folks. And it says also in some of the information I've dug up, it says, and followers and friends. If you look at a book written by John Lee Williams, it talks about there's 4 settlements actually in Walton County in the early 1820s. His book is actually printed in 1820s, I think 1827. He states there's 4 settlements. There's a settlement in Alamorant, Yellow Water, which is in Okaloosa County. There's another settlement in Aliqual. There's another one, Uchee Valley, of course. And then there's in the north, there's McDade's Pond, or what is today Paxton. There's land deeds and titles and other information that states that there was, the McLennans and Campbells, they weren't necessarily the very first. They were here early, yes, most definitely so. But there was other families that came along. You had the McCaskells, the Evans, Ramseys, and the Scottish settlers settled all over those 4 places I mentioned. They were the main settlements. Most of them, if you look out on the map, they're all next to water. Alamorant was on Yellow Water River. You had Aliqual on Aliqual River. And of course, Uchee Valley, it was a massive area. It was the largest settlement, of course. But that, on Chattahoochee River is where Neil McLennan had his property. So it's obvious that, that's where they came in on the river. The rivers were easier passage than actually the Indian trails. Eventually in Walton County, there was 2 roads that went through. One on the south part of the county, around where Highway 20 comes across toward Calfords on Highway 20. And there was also one from the north that came from Alamorant or Yellow Water, came in through East River by Show River. It came in and intersected at Aliqual. Then it came across on Rock Hill Road in that area through the valley and came over toward Dead River. There's actual documentation that it went to Dead River. That's in the travels. There's a bishop in 1827 that comes across Walton County, and he actually identifies that route coming through Walton County and all the trials and tribulations he goes through trying to get across. He's trying to go from Pensacola to St. Augustine, and he has quite an adventure. But anyway, that was a basic county. In the beginning, in 1824, you got to understand, Walton County was a huge county. It was Okaloosa, Walton, Bay, Washington, Holmes. They needed a more centralized location for the courthouse. They were sharing Big Springs over in east of the Chattahoochee River, which didn't work out well for people. So they came to a common vote, the settlers at the time in Walton County, and there was only 717 people here in 1824, 1825. Okay, that's over that many counties today. So they came to consensus, and they basically petitioned for a centralized location. And a lot of people say, well, why was it in Aliqual? There's more people in Uchee Valley. That is correct. But the thing is, what I mentioned before, the main roads, the arteries of roads, junctioned at Aliqual, and at the time it was in the center of the county. And they said, we're going to put it in Aliqual. The first county seat was approved in 1825. It was at William Bailey's house. In 1828, the territorial judge of West Florida, Breckenridge, came over and bought 500 acres. And he bought it in the Aliqual area, and that's where the Superior Court was held, and that's where he had his courthouse. But back to the errors in some of the history book, like I mentioned before, the very first page says, again, I said Neil McClendon, one of the first Scottish settlers. That is Neil McLennan. He left in 1834 due to all the, I guess he had some issues with overcrowding or how people did things. So he left and went out toward in Texas by boat. It's in the history book that way. We'll go along with what they say. We actually have stories about that tells about his travels. But he goes to basically where Waco, Texas is today. There's actually McLennan County named after him. And of course, some of his other relatives went there, and of course, they had the problems with the Indians there and the battles and such. Also in the history book, it says that there's a circuit judge Exum, and that's why the courthouse was there in Aliqual. Well, there is no circuit court judge Exum. Of course, as I mentioned, it's territorial judge of West Florida, Henry Marie Breckenridge, and he built his 3-wing hue log house there. on Aliqual, which is on central location on Cosson Road, where it is today. We got a marker there. And he built a 3-wing hugh-log house there. One wing was his home. The second wing was where James Evans homesteaded with him, kept care of the place while he was gone. And the third place where he had the court and the tavern and stuff for the stagecoach come through there, because there was a stagecoach came through like once or twice a week from Santa Rosa, which is Gulf Breeze today. And it says the first settlement on that route was Aliqual. Another area here, the courthouse being Uchiana. Originally, when it was being voted on, the way it's stipulated in the articles and the laws, it says that it was tossed up between Aliqual and Sandy Creek Settlement. No mention of Uchiana. My reason or rationale behind Uchiana being there was that John McKinnon and his son-in-law, Giles Bowers, owned the land there. So it's obvious, hey, if you got land, hey, we're going to put things are going to grow around this place, we put it here. So basically they put it and named Uchiana. Also on the maps, when you're looking there, you're looking up Uchiana, and I tell people this a lot, you won't find Uchiana on a map until 1839, but I just told you that it was there in 1834. The courthouse was moved there. It was put there. Okay, they didn't have a road there. They jumped, had infrastructure. There was no road. Okay, they didn't have a court. They didn't have the courthouse built there yet. They had no post office. So the road and the post office was petitioned, and they didn't get a post office until 1839. It was in Uchi Valley before that. Uchi Valley had a post office. That post office was managed by Thomas Bride originally. He lived in Mossy Bend. So I'm saying the post office actually was in Red Bay. And you got to remember, the valley was a vast area, 25-mile radius there. You had Mossy Bend, Red Bay, you had up there on Bruce Creek, you had up on C.J. Laird Road, McCaskills all lived up down that area next to the church. You had Knox Hill, you had a vast area there of people. And like I say again, there was more people there. Matter of fact, Breckenridge wrote in some of his letters, he said there's roughly 30 families living in Aliqual and probably twice that many in the next settlement, which is Uchi Valley. Again, not Uchiana, Uchi Valley. I say Uchiana was named, I'm pretty sure was a McKinnon title. It says also in the Walton County book, it says that, let it remember that Colonel John L. McKinnon was the first Justice of Peace and the only one for years in Walton County. He was not the first Justice of Peace. Matter of fact, when he got here in 1828, he ran to be Justice of Peace. Actually, he was rejected, because back then there was appointments versus being voted in. He was rejected. He didn't become a Justice of Peace to around 1834-35 is when he finally got elected in there. Another keynote they have in here is Colonel John L. McKinnon. He had a lot of land. He had a lot of cattle. He was a large cattle raiser. He had a lot of slaves. So he was substantially well off. So back then in the South, they took a title, colonel. He was never a military colonel. He stated in the Creek Indian War that he's this hero that goes and saves Enos Evans and all that at the river in a big battle, and actually he was a private. It's actually in the muster rolls that he is a private. His brother Lachlan McKinnon was the main militia captain. He ran most of the militia there. The head colonel was Colonel Levin Brown. He actually oversee the whole thing. Again, this is another excerpt from the McKinnon version of the Walton County history book. It says that he was the ranking military officer in this part of the state. Again, he wasn't. He was a private. He talks about a Colonel George Hawkins of Mariana being wounded in a battle at the Fort Aliqual, which is down by Site 6. That's where that actual fort was at. He actually was a lieutenant. He was wounded in a battle, but he wasn't a colonel, he was a lieutenant. It also states that there were several small battles fought in Walton County. That's not true. There was roughly about between 12 and 14 battles fought just alone on Aliqual River, up and down. And there's actual stories of where the militia massacred women and children, Indian women and children, and they cut their ears off just to get the earrings out of their ears and stuff. And in that one battle, there was only one male in the whole crowd, and something like 25, 30 women and children were slaughtered. And they said you could hear them screaming from miles away. None of this is written in our books. So like I say, I'll try to tell people, tell the good about Walton County, tell the bad about Walton County, talk about the ugly. And that was one of the ugly things we did. You got to remember the Indians were here first. And basically the Creek Indians, when they came through, basically were coming back to some of their homestead. So, you know, they sort of had a right to be, I guess, mad because they were being run all out of Alabama and Georgia off of their lands. So anyway, this carried on from 1836 to 1837, the Creek Indian War. There's another information I've dug up that talks about Aliqual being devastated by the Indians. What happened, the Indians would raid these farms and they were stealing all their crops, their cattle and stuff, and several of the women lost their husbands during this time period. There's 3 or 4 individuals, you know, males that served the militia got killed. So what happened after the Creek Indian War, they actually had to bring rations, the government did, into this area to keep the, you know, the families fed because they were starving to death. None of that's written in there in our books. So, you know, there's a lot more to read about. There is some stories we've got in the Walton County Heritage Association that goes more in depth than what I've told you. This is just a small little story of some of it, but it talks about all the battles. It talks about some of the things that you know, that went on. Another error found that they tell a story about Oh Brother Charlie. Reverend Charles S.V. Jones lived in Aliqual, not Knox Hill. They say he lived in Knox Hill. He established the Methodist Church in April of 1827, and this was a few months before the Uchi Valley Church started, the Presbyterian church there. They're both early churches, but Oh Brother Charlie married a Valley girl. He married Nancy McCaskill. So, of course, he's got reasons to visit over there. He would go back and forth. They call about the Old Brother Charlie's Trail from Aliqual. Well, he actually went from Aliqual to the Uchi Valley, not the other way around that we have it written in there. But anyway, he was a Methodist preacher. He served in the Creek Indian War, him and his son both. He was a postmaster at Aliqual, and his son was a mail carrier. There's also a story that is accurate in the McKinnon book. It talks about he loses 4 children. They all die the same day. We don't know if it was a yellow fever, what it was, but mysteriously, all 4 died the same day, 4 of his children. Oh Brother Charlie is buried with his wife Nancy and his 4 children at the Uchi Valley Church, all buried together there. But so like I say again, they had him living in the valley, but he didn't. He lived in Aliqual. The land deeds all show it. There's records showing he was a postmaster. Walton County Heritage Association, type that in there. If you pull it up, you'll have past and present issues. Go to past issues and you can type in Creek Indian War or whatever. There's several articles in there. They're all legit. They're all backed by documentation. If you go down there where the credits are, it actually give you places to go to pull up the information that I'm substantiating this with. Like I said, I can show you in there versus telling you. It's not me making these things up. Some people say, well, where did you get this from? It's not in the book. And I said, well, it's not in the book because I've got documentation showing it. There are some records at University of West Florida's got them in storage there. I've got copies of some. It's not all of them, but some of them. And some of the county records, they're out there. There is some. I won't say all of them. There's some there.